Okay, so time has passed since the last video, or at least the last video was recorded, and now. So let me get you up to speed on what has gone on. I have obviously got the engine and trans, you can see back there a little bit, in the car. Now, I did a lot of Googling. I couldn't find any videos of anybody doing an Aisin AR5 with an LS and a 240. I'm sure they're out there. In fact, when I talked to the guys at FabBot, they said that at least one person had done it. But I couldn't find any information on it other than people saying it'd be a good idea. So let me tell you what I know so far. I went with the FabBot Aisin AR5 to LS conversion kit. And to be incredibly clear, that kit was great. It's perfect. I have zero complaints. Everything was incredibly high quality. There are plenty of videos on how to bolt that thing up. No problems with that at all. So before I give it's going to be kind of a negative review of the whole thing, let me just say that it's not because of FabBot. Their kit is awesome, and if you're looking to do an Aisin AR5 to an LS, I recommend it. Here's why I'm going to tell you it's probably not the optimal thing to put in a 240. The AR5 itself, you can find them at junkyards for next to nothing. I got mine from one of those places where they pull it for you for like, I want to say it was $400, which is what I paid for the engine, actually. Not a ton at all. It's way cheaper than a CD09, obviously way cheaper than a T56. Okay. Now, I bought my FabBot conversion kit that came with a clutch, flywheel, pressure plate, throwout bearing, slave cylinder, all the good stuff. Even transmission fluid, and the bell housing, an F-body bell housing. It came with everything necessary to bolt it up. And I believe when I ordered it, it was Black Friday, and I think it was $1,800. I think now it's a little more. You can check their website. Don't quote me on that. But additionally, I had to get their shifter relocation kit. This guy right here. And this is an awesome piece of hardware. Awesome. Very well made. But that, I think I got on Black Friday, and it was 400 and something bucks. So let's say we're $1,800 in for the adapter kit, and $400 in for the shifter relocator. So that's $2,200. Let's say $2,300 or $2,400 with tax and everything. Okay, and then you're $400 in for the transmission, and so now we're at, what's that? $2,600. Well, I mean, a used T56 you can find for $2,000 to $2,500, right? And yes, you still have to buy clutch, flywheel, pressure plate, all that stuff. So you've probably got another $400, $600 in that stuff. So it's going to be a little more, but you're going to find a lot more mounts that are made to mount your LS with a T56 in a 240. It's a proven formula. Now, this transmission has been proven up to 700 foot-pounds of torque repeatedly on the drag strip. I know it's going to work fine, but I'm just saying if I had to do it again, I would probably go with the T56. And I want to be very clear again, it has nothing to do with FabBot. They have an awesome product. Okay, it's just maybe not the best choice for the 240. I did have to clearance the transmission tunnel. I had to pull the engine and transmission out 3 or 4 times and bang it back. So that's, normal swap stuff, I guess. I don't know if that's necessary with T56. I don't think it is, but I had to do that. I am having to make my own transmission mount because nobody makes a Aisin AR5 to LS to 240 transmission engine mount kit. So that's something you got to keep in mind. But all that considered, just take that all into account when you're deciding what to do for your swap. I probably wouldn't go that route again. I would go with TV6. Now, Beside that, you can also see I've got a lot of the accessories on the engine. So for the vapor lines, these guys here, on the back, I went with a block-off plate, which I believe they do by default on the LS6. So these little OE block-off adapters. On the front, I found these vapor lines to AN3 adapters. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come off those. I'm going to try and come back under the throttle body to a T somewhere over here, and then I'm going to drill and tap the water pump housing and send it into there. I see a lot of LS guys doing stuff like that with their vapor lines. I did go with a brand new F-body water pump, F-body pulley, F-body alternator pulley here. This one, it's not actually stock F-body, so I'm not running air conditioning, I'm not running power steering. And so there's this thing somebody came up with to where you use this specific pulley with a specific washer and this tensioner, and you can just go with just the alternator set up like this. Kind of scarily, but I guess it works fine, even on high horsepower cars. The only contact you have with the crank pulley is on the bottom side, where it loops around below this, and then below this guy up to here. So you don't have a ton of contact with the crank pulley. However, a lot of people are running it, and it's working. So who are running a lot more horsepower than I am. So that's what I'm going with here. I'll put that information in the description if you're interested in doing that setup. I don't know if I'm going to go with no power steering or if I'm going to go with electric power steering. I do have an electric power steering pump that I may use for this. But initially I think I'm going to convert this to manual steering using the old Nickel Club method that's been tried and true for many, many years. For all this pretty stuff here, I went with Holley valve covers that have the integrated coil pack mounts. I went with the MSD coil packs. Obviously, this is not quite the correct coil pack to go with. I probably should have gone with the ones that are mounted a little more vertically. But if I go with, I've got a 90-degree boot / connector to go here, and then straight connectors that'll go from there down to the actual spark plug. It's going to fit fine. I'm not worried about that. Also, red. That's freaking cool. Continuing to spend money like a moron, I went with the Fast LSXR 102 intake and throttle body combo. I can fit my fist inside of, look, with space. This is absurd. So I'm really excited about that. I've got Jegs fuel rails on the other side, and I believe I went with 80-pound injectors. Look at that. They're about double whatever the stock ones are. And I know I'm not making double horsepower, so I should have plenty of duty cycle there. What else? I think that's really it so far. Tonight I'm going to continue my battle in trying to come up with a solution for the transmission mount. So this is another problem with the Aisin AR5. Let me get under the car, and then I'll show you. Okay, I am upside down and backwards right now, but take a look at the bottom, the transmission here. This is the bottom. I don't know how it's showing on video, but this is the bottom. The transmission mount mounts to these two guys right here. Okay, and you got this nubbin here in the middle, which is kind of annoying. Now, it's hard to tell in the video, but this is maybe an inch above the frame rail. There's not a ton of clearance here, and I've got it raised pretty much as high as I can before my shifter relocator is going to hit the roof of the tranny tunnel. So, hold on. So then you've got this giant pig, and this is the actual mount. And this is 100% most definitely below the frame rail now. These things probably stick maybe 1.5 inches lower than the frame rail. And then
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm working with one hand here. And then you gotta have some way to secure that. So I made a doodad. Oh, this is the worst position possible. Oh, my bones. Okay. So then you gotta have something to actually attach that to. Now I probably could have used flat stock and saved 3/4 of an inch. But like, now this is probably 1.5 inches, 2 inches. It's probably a total of 1.5 inches below the frame rail. But look at how thick that thing is. So I've got an idea that might make for a better mount. I don't know. I'm gonna fiddle with this and see what I can do. But I hate it. Let me be very clear. I hate this because I've got to come from the edge here to my angle iron there, and it'll work, but I hate it. So what I might do is go with use like a piece of flat stock here. Take a grinder and cut this thing flat, because it's not necessary for this setup. So that I can put a piece of flat stock here. And then on the end of the piece of flat stock, do a couple of those universal link adapters. Kind of like is used in the engine mount here, a lot of custom engine mounts. And then have that come off the sides. Right, those are the round things with the bushing in the middle and the metal rod at the bushing. Have that come off the side where I've got some sort of carrier here that then comes off and connects that. And that would raise it up so it's probably 2 inches higher. And angrily, as I describe it, I think that's the way to go, which means that I don't have a whole lot of work to do tonight because I have to order those. Poop! But, anyway, that's kind of some of the challenges with the Aisin AR5 in a 240. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. But I'm learning. That's probably going to be it for today. I'm going to order some parts. And I'm going to get to quote-unquote fabricating, I'm going to call it. I'm not good at it, but I can make things, I can make metal stick together. I'll try and film that process a bit more. But that gets you up to speed as to where we are right now. So, if you guys have any ideas, please let me know. I could certainly use some inspiration or ideas from people who are smarter than I am. But otherwise, I just appreciate your kind words of support that help me to remember that I shouldn't push this car down my driveway into a freaking bog. I'm close. Well, honestly, once the transmission's mounted up, we're close. So anyway, thanks guys. Okay, I finished up what I'm gonna do for tonight. Let me show you where I'm leaving off here a second. So I began making a tranny mount previously, but I ended up scrapping it because it just hung way too low. So here's the bottom side of that shift relocator, by the way. I'm sorry. I've got maybe 1/4 of an inch of spacing up here. There we go. You can kind of see it between that little support, the top of the shifter relocation kit. It's pretty tight. But what I did was I put a laser pretty much from this hole here down to this, and it sat a little bit low. It's okay if it's not 100% perfect. You want it close. I think it's close. Like the horizontal was here, and the vertical was right in the middle. So I think we're going to be okay with that. I just can't go up any higher on this thing without serious train saw modification. So anyway, tonight I set out fabricating a new tranny mount. So what I did was I drilled a couple of holes up top for the bolts to go directly in the transmission here. I cut out a little area for this hump right here, and then I clearanced it with a hole saw so I can get a 17 mil socket up there. And what I'm going to do is I've got a couple of universal end joint, I'll show you here in a second, that'll mount here on the end of this guy. So it just kind of comes straight off like this. That's mounted here. And then I'll have the bracket to support it coming from here. And what that'll do is that'll keep the bottom of this mount, it's going to be pretty much flush with the frame rails. You can kind of see from the perspective of the frame rail, it's going to be pretty much flush. But that's as good as I'm going to get it. The old mount would have hung down another 2, maybe even more inches. So this is going to work a lot better. Let me show you what I'm going to use here in a second. Okay, my bones. All right, my shop's a freaking mess right now. Okay, so these guys here. So I'll weld these to the end of it. It'll sit kind of like this, as we were looking at it before. I'll weld these guys to the end of it, and then I'll make some brackets to hold like this. And I think that's going to work out really well. That's all for now. Yeah. Oh, one more thing that I wanted to say. So I needed to pick up some longer bolts to bolt in the shifter relocator. They are M8 by 1.25, 55 mil. Seem to be the right size. So. Hopefully tomorrow I get back out and do some more work. A little more progress here. So, FabBot shift relocation kit for the Aisin AR5 with the arm kind of in the back position like that. Does a really good job of putting that pretty much exactly where it should be. So if I, hold on a second here, this little shim sham. Okay. Just gonna set it in place for now. I'm not gonna bother snapping it in, but if I take this guy and put it here, throw the shift knob. They've got the option where you can buy their fancy aluminum shift knob. There we go. And pull that up onto the nut there. I tell you what, I mean, that's pretty much perfect. The throw is crisp and smooth. I don't have any transmission fluid in it yet, and obviously the engine's not running, but can't find reverse, but I probably just need to make the gears move a little bit. Still, it puts it like exactly where it needs to be. That's darn near dead center of the shifter area. So, up thumb for that. Okay, so I've welded the two universal bushing things on either side of the transmission portion of the tranny mount. I'm keeping it far back, and I'm hoping that you can't see my welds because they're not pretty. But they look like they've penetrated sufficiently, so I'm not too worried about it. Plus, they've only got to hold about 60 pounds. Still, that's welded on top and bottom. So next I need to make the little tabs that'll go on the chassis portion that will hold these things in place. Alright, I have finished welding up the passenger side transmission bracket. It's right there. It's right, see, from here you can't tell my welds suck. So that's it, right there. Tomorrow I'll get started on the driver's side bracket. Alright, tranny mount 2 is as done as it's going to be. These welds are not as much of an abomination. I did not do a good job of cleaning beforehand, so there's a lot of spattery gunk. But this should be okay, I think. This is the driver's side. This one's got to be taller because there's a hump on the side of the chassis where the exhaust goes. So this is about 1.5 inches taller than the other one. Let this cool off. I'll make sure it still fits tomorrow. If it does, I might add a second brace here, or maybe like a diagonal brace here, just to give it a bit more strength. But, I don't know, it's a thing. I think I'll also round these corners off here, just to make it look a little less
A little less homemade, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So, transmission mounty thing complete? Question mark? At least for now. It sits maybe, I don't know, half an inch below the frame rails. I could raise it up that exact half inch, I think. Because the jack sagged a little bit when I was making it, and so I could probably go up half or maybe 3/8 of an inch. And maybe when I remake this in the winter for version 2, that's what I'll do. But for now, just to get it sitting in here, I think it's good. Pulled the jack away, didn't budge at all. I need to get some longer bolts for like these guys here. They're just a little short. I want to be able to get my lock washer on there, but I mean, I think it's good for how kind of wacky that whole transmission mount setup is. So now I can at least measure for a drive shaft, and that'll be cool. Annoyingly, the transmission, you can see kind of a piece of wood there, sits lower than the mount here. So even that's probably 1.5 inches below the frame rails, which is kind of annoying. I just do not think this is the right transmission for this car. But I've got it, so I'm going to try it. That concludes the engine and the transmission mounting portion of the project. I'm currently working on and filming the fuel portion, so I hope to come back in a few more days with an update. Otherwise, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any comments for me, any suggestions, please let me know. Otherwise, like, subscribe, and stick around for more tomfoolery.